go take this off now because I've grown at least 2 cup sizes since buying this. Once upon a time in Hollywood. So we start with this clip from a TV show called Bounty Law. It's your typical cowboy western. The star of the show is Rick Dalton, who we'll be following for the rest of the film. Cut to an interview with Rick and his stunt double and friend Cliff Booth. Quick little joke, the interviewer asks Rick what the job of a stunt double is. Rick basically sums it up as helping to carry the load, and then Cliff agrees that his job is carrying Rick's load. Haha! Saturday, February 8th, 1969. Dates are really important in this film, seeing as though it's based on real events. Rick and Cliff are at a bar in a restaurant waiting for Marvin Schwartz. Marvin takes Rick away to have a talk. They discuss 2 of Rick's films, Tanner, which is just another typical western, and the 14 Fists of McCluskey, which is a film based around World War II. There's a scene where Rick burns a load of Nazis with a flamethrower, quite an obvious reference to Inglourious Basterds. Bounty Law has been cancelled for a little while now, and Rick has failed to start a real career as a movie actor. Most of what he does now is he works as what is called the heavy for a pilot of TV shows, basically the bad guy who loses at the end of the show. Tomorrow is doing the pilot for Lancer. Marvin mentions how this could possibly be harming the public's perception of Rick, him losing all these times. He also brings up a quite cheesy music video Rick was in. Marvin wants Rick to go to Italy to work on spaghetti westerns. Rick leaves to think about it and then breaks down crying in the parking lot. When Cliff asks what's wrong, he tells him about Marvin wanting him to do Italian movies. Cliff doesn't see the big deal, but then Rick explains how shit Italian films at the time are. Cliff drives Rick home and Rick notices that he has new neighbours, Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate. This instantly perks up Rick because he is, in his words, one pool party away from being in a Polanski movie. Obviously Polanski was fresh off of his hit Rosemary's Baby. Rick practices his lines for Lancer tomorrow and Cliff goes home to his trailer with his dog Brandy. We see a very big contrast in the lifestyles of Cliff and Rick. Cliff living in quite a dirty, run-down trailer, eating not very good food, whereas Rick is in this mansion and he's drinking in his swimming pool. Polanski brings Tate to a party at the Playboy Mansion where they meet up with their friends Jay Sebring, Steve McQueen and Michelle Phillips. Sharon goes and dances at the party and there's this really nice pan overhead shot of the entire party. McQueen talks to Connie Stevens about how at one point Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring were a couple. Sharon Tate then went over to Europe to film a Roman Polanski film. Polanski and Tate then became a couple, and since both of those have moved back to LA, the 3 of them have been inseparable. They note that Sebring is basically just waiting for Polanski to fuck up so he can have Tate all to himself again. The next morning, Cliff brings Rick to the set of Lancer. Rick asks Cliff to look at his TV antenna, he thinks the wind might have knocked it over. This is where I'm going to choose to mention the self-indulgent driving scenes. There's a lot of driving in this film and there's no real need for it. But it looks awesome, just the fast cars driving around this amazing setting. It's a pleasure to watch, it's just really fun. It's like having a takeaway. You know, and while you're eating it, you're having time of your life. You're thinking, fuck me, this meat feast is amazing. But then the next morning, you're like, oh, I spent a tenner. Did I really need to? Was that necessary? And that sums up these shots. They're not really necessary, but they're a fucking lot of fun. While Cliff's fixing the antenna, we get to see a shot of shirtless Brad Pitt. All I'm saying is, I would. While Cliff is fixing the antenna, Charles Manson goes to Sharon Tate's house looking for his friends. Jay Sebring informs him that they moved out, so then Charles Manson leaves. On his way out, he and Cliff exchange a short look. This brief scene is all we see of Charles Manson in the film, so for me I didn't actually realise it was him at first, and then like after the film when I found out it was him, it was like a really cool oh shit moment. We then see a flashback to the set of Green Hornet where Rick and Cliff are. Rick is talking to his friend Randy, trying to get Randy to give Cliff a gig as a stuntman. Randy is reluctant because he believes rumours that Cliff killed his wife. Eventually Rick convinces him to give Cliff the gig. We then see Bruce Lee talking about some fighters and how he'd love to fight them and prove he's a way better fighter than them. Cliff laughs at this, thinking the other fighters are way better than Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee challenges Cliff to a fight, no punching in the face. First person to knock their opponent down wins, first to 3. Straight away Bruce Lee hits a kick on Cliff and knocks him to the ground for the first win. Cliff invites Bruce Lee to try it again. When Bruce Lee does, he grabs his leg and swings him like a fucking baseball bat into a car. Eventually Bruce Lee gets up and does his typical sort of noises, you know, like the martial arts sort of thingies, yeah. Cliff then mocks his martial art noises. So then we start round 3 and we get some actual hand-to-hand combat. It's really cool, really well choreographed, really enjoyable, but it's cut short by Randy's wife, who yells at Cliff for beating up Bruce. Randy comes over to see what's going on and his wife informs him that Cliff was beating up Bruce. Bruce takes objection to this, saying nobody was beating up Bruce because obviously he doesn't want people to know that he was being beaten up. Cliff mentions the giant Bruce Lee-sized dent in the car. This pisses off Randy's wife because it's her car and she tells Cliff to leave. Sharon goes to pick up a book for Polanski and on her way out she notices the theatre across the road is playing a film she is in called Wrecking Crew. She goes and asks if she'd possibly get free admission because she's in the film. After a bit of a conversation with the manager, they remember her and who she is, and she's let in for free. The woman at the box office asks Sharon for a picture, but then tells her to stand next to the poster so people will know who she is. Sharon keeps checking the audience's reactions to certain parts of the film, making sure that they're laughing at the right time, that they're wowed at the right time. We get a cool match cut of her fighting in the film to her doing the choreography with Bruce Lee training. They used the actual footage from the film Wrecking Crew, which was a nice touch, I enjoyed that. This is the first of 2 really unnecessary feet shots in this film. Sharon puts her feet up on the sort of chair in front of her and there's more feet in the frame than there is Sharon Tate. Like, imagine if I'm just doing this review then all of a sudden, BAM! Feet! And then like I carry on with the review but there's just these 2 giant fucking feet in front of me. No, it's shit. It's completely unnecessary. There's no justification for it at all. It's just uncomfortable. Rick goes to hair and makeup and he's told that he's going to have lots of stuff in his face, such as a moustache, long hair and a hat. He asks how people will recognise him and the person on the show says that he doesn't want people to recognise him. He wants them to see the bad guy, not Jake Cahill from Bounty Law. Rick sits down next to his co-star Trudy. Trudy is a method actor who likes to stay in character as much as possible on set and also doesn't eat before a take as she believes it makes her sluggish. She's reading this fucking huge book about Walt Disney. Did I mention she's 8 years old? Rick is reading a book about a booker and he was the best there was and he could book any bull with ease. But then he has an accident and he struggles to book bulls again and he comes to terms with how he's not the best anymore. This makes Rick cry as he finally realises the similarities between him and Easy Breezy, the book's protagonist. Trudy then comforts him. Shooting starts and everything goes well at first, but eventually Rick starts to forget his lines because he was drunk when he was learning them last night. He goes back to his trailer and we have this really awesome scene of him having a meltdown, kicking everything around, getting really pissed off at himself. It ends with this beautiful shot of him speaking to himself in the mirror, but the way it's set up, the reflection of the mirror is staring right at the camera, and he vows that if he fucks up again he will blow his brains out tonight. This is one of the best scenes in the film. The acting from DiCaprio as always was amazing and the conviction of it was just a really awesome scene to watch. Cliff is on his way home from Ritz and he notices a hitchhiker called Pussycat. He's noticed her a few times over the weekend and he decides to pick her up. When he asks where he's taking her, she says Spahn Ranch. Cliff remembers this because that's where they used to film Bounty Law. Pussycat starts to tell him directions, but Cliff stops her, saying he knows where it is. She asks him if he used to be an actor there, and he replies that he was a stuntman. She says that's good. He asks why. She says that she believes actors are fake, and that they just read things written by other people, whereas stuntmen are real, they do real things. Unnecessary and uncomfortable feet shot number 2. It's just bad, innit? Like, you know, artistic freedom and whatnot, but who the fuck puts random feet in the middle of a film? Fuck me, man. Fuck. Pussycat offers to give Cliff a blowjob. Cliff asks how old she is. She says that she's 18. He has to see some ID. She complains about this. And then Cliff says the only reason you're complaining is because you're not 18. Cliff notes how jail has been trying to get him his whole life, and that if he ever does go to jail, it won't be for Poontang. Remember when Poontang was a thing that people said? I think we should bring Poontang back. Dude, remember the Rock's shirt that he had, the Poontang Pie one? Oh, you know what, next year, 2020, is the year of the Poontang. I want everyone wearing that shirt. Cliff and Pussycat arrive at Spahn Ranch. Pussycat notes that Cliff should stick around to meet Charlie. If you're a dumb fuck like me, Charlie is Charles Manson. One of the female hippies at the ranch thanks Cliff for bringing Pussycat home, stating, "We love pussy." Tarantino, the king of dialogue. Cliff asks to see George Spahn, the owner of Spahn Ranch, and everyone says no, that it's George's nap time. He goes into this house anyway and meets Sweetie. Sweetie again says no, it's his nap time, because they like to watch TV on a night, and Sweetie doesn't like it when George falls asleep. Eventually Sweetie lets him in. This is where I'll mention the entire Spahn Ranch bit is amazing. The tension in it trumps most 2019 horror films. It's so well done. Annabelle Comes Home, more like Annabelle Comes Horrible. Sweetie warns Cliff he may be in a deep sleep because she fucked his brains out this morning. Yep. She also tells Cliff that George is blind. Probably could have started out with that one. I feel like that is more important than his sexual habits, but okay. George can't remember who Cliff is, but they have a conversation and he thanks him for coming anyway. Cliff asks if they're taking advantage of George. George says they aren't and that he is happy. When Cliff leaves the building, only Pussy is there. She yells at him for embarrassing her, and Cliff just walks to the car. He notices that a male hippie has put a knife in his tyre. Cliff gets out one of them twisty bar things. What the fuck are they called? Tyre iron! Cliff gets out a tyre iron and orders the man to fix it. The man retorts with a "fuck you." Cliff then punches him in the motherfucking face. You know, that thing, the one that's not supposed to be punched. Apparently Cliff didn't get the memo. He does it another 2 times before the man eventually changes the tyre. A woman runs away to get another male hippie called Tets. By the time Tex gets back, though, Cliff has already driven away. We go back to Rick now because Tarantino can't just tell a story in order. Rick is in a scene where he's holding Trudy hostage. Rick improvises a lot of his lines and you can just tell there's a lot more conviction in the way he's acting. After the scene's done, the director praises Rick on his amazing performance. Trudy also praises him, saying it's the best acting she's ever seen in her whole life. The camera stays on Rick a little longer as what Trudy says moves him to tears. This is where I'll mention the amazing Western cinematography. Like whenever it's a show of a different genre, then they really show it. They don't just use the typical sort of nowadays cinematography. If it's a Western, then they make it look like a Western using the shots that a Western would, and it's a really cool, unique experience. 6 months later, a voiceover states that Cliff and Rick went to do the Italian spaghetti westerns, and that while there, Rick met and married an Italian actress called Francesca Tabucci. August 8th, 1969. Rick and Cliff are now back in LA. Rick says to Cliff that he feels like it's time for them to go their separate ways, that he can't afford to have Cliff around all the time anymore now that he's got a wife, and that his acting career isn't as good as it used to be. They spend one last night together getting drunk. Not just drunk, but entitled movie star drunk. Sharon, Jay, and Wojciech, how the fuck do you pronounce his name? Wojciech. Wojciech, okay, I got it. Sharon, Jay, Wojciech and Abigail are having a get together and a drink as well at the same time. The four of them go out to a restaurant to have a drink at the same time that Cliff and Rick do the same. All six step back to their respective houses late at night. Cliff takes out a cigarette that he bought from Pussycat that has been dipped in acid. He decides to smoke it while he takes Brandy out for a walk. Rick starts to make frozen margaritas. Outside, Tex, Katie, Sadie and Flower Child arrive with the intention to kill Sharon Tate and her friends. Rick comes out with a blender full of margarita and starts yelling at them whilst drinking the margarita because priorities for making too much noise. He yells at them, calling them names, telling them to leave. Katie starts reaching for a gun, but Tex drives away. At the bottom of the hill, they finally realise who Rick is. Sadie suggests that they go and break into his house, kill him and whoever else is in there. She says that movie stars such as Rick taught them how to kill, so now they will kill the people who taught them. They agree to do it and start to walk up. By this point, Cliff has gotten back in the house and is now feeding Brandy. Flower Child says she forgot a knife in the car, goes back to get it, but then drives away, leaving the three on their own. The three break in, Tex and Katie at the front and Sadie from the side. Because he's still tripping from the acid cigarette, Cliff is not scared and even questions if they're actually real. Tex replies to this saying, "I'm as real as a donut, motherfucker." Not quite sure what that means or how real donuts are compared to other savoury treats, but we'll leave it. Tex pulls out a gun and then Cliff starts to recognise them from Spawn Ranch. Sadie yells for Tex to shoot him, but then Cliff signals Brandy to attack Tex. She starts biting his arm and his crotch. Sadie runs at Cliff with a knife, but then he throws a can of dog food straight at her face and that smashes the fuck out of her face. Cliff turns his attention to Tex and starts attacking him. When he realises Sadie is getting up, he signals for Brandy to attack Sadie. Katie then runs at Cliff and they both fall over a table. Cliff realises that Katie managed to stab him in the process, then smashes her face off of every surface in the kitchen. He smashes it into a telephone receiver, off of a fireplace, off the kitchen side until there's like no face there anymore. Sadie shoots the gun and this spooks Brandy away, and it is then revealed that she managed to shoot Cliff. She runs out, flailing her arms because she can't see, crashes through a glass door and into the pool where Rick is relaxing. She keeps flailing the knife and shooting the gun upwards into the air. Rick then grabs a flamethrower and tortures her into a fucking crisp. This film is amazing. The police and paramedics arrive, Cliff is taken to hospital, Francesca, who has taken a shit ton of sleeping tablets, goes to bed and sleeps with Brandy by her side. Rick sees Jay Sebring and Jay asks him what happened. Rick tells him everything that happened. Sharon talks to Rick over the intercom and invites him round for some drinks. As Rick and Sharon finally meet, the camera pans up and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood comes onto screen. This is a reminder that it is a fairy tale and that the actual events in real life were much more tragic. A lot of people have criticised the lack of Sharon Tate in this film, and I can understand that as she doesn't play a huge role, but especially when you're dealing with real life events, I feel like they had to be careful, and a good way of doing that was keeping her involvement to a minimum. As much as I would have liked to see more of Sharon Tate, I feel like what there was easily established the type of person she is and her place in Hollywood at the time. At the end of the day, Sharon Tate's real-life sister approved of the way she was shown in the film, and if her sister doesn't have a problem with it, then why the fuck should I? I love how the film spliced in different genres and made them feel like the genres that they actually were from. It made the viewing experience unique, and I've never seen anything like it before. The entire soundtrack for the film was amazing as always. Tarantino knocked it out of the park again. Especially the ending fight scene with You Keep Me Hanging On by Vanilla Fudge. That is one of the best music pairings I think I've ever seen in cinema. A few years back in interviews, Quentin Tarantino said that his next film was going to be about the Manson family. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood isn't a film about the Manson family, it is a film with the Manson family in it. So don't go into the film expecting in-depth detail about the Manson family. It is a long film, but honestly the time flies by. It feels nowhere near the length that it actually is. It's a pleasure to watch. This film, at its core, is a love letter to film and to cinema, and it's just so enjoyable to watch. You can feel the love and passion that was put into every last shot. Jen Chaney from Vulture.com mentioned a quote from a hippie talking about the Sharon Tate murders in 1969, who said, "Most Americans are always looking for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. The hippie believes that the pot of gold is not the important thing, but the rainbow itself. Whether there is a pot of gold or not, that isn't important, even though there usually isn't a pot of gold." Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was that rainbow, and at the end Tarantino gives us the pot of gold by subverting history, but then as the title reveals it all to be a fairy tale, the pot of gold is removed, and he reminds us that in real life there very rarely is a happy ending or a pot of gold. I think it definitely helps to be a passionate fan of cinema to enjoy this film, but by no means do you need to know Delia Petroni's dick size to enjoy it. Impressive 9, by the way. Brad Pitt steals the fucking show with Cliff. Cliff is such an amazing character, and Brad Pitt pulled it off to perfection, and I loved every second that Cliff was on screen. Me personally, I would give Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 10 out of 10. I know that might seem controversial, but I really enjoyed this film, and I loved it down to the last scene. It was amazing. If nothing else, this film gave us the iconic visual of Leonardo DiCaprio drinking margaritas from a blender while wearing a robe.